Well, I have found a very interesting article about bizarre laws that still exist in the United States of America, such as an age limit on people who can play in playgrounds in Kansas, a ban on using ferrets as hunting animals in West Virginia. In West Virginia, you cannot use ferrets as hunting animals. And, oh, by the way, did you know that in New York, it was illegal to wear masks until they decided to make it until they decided to change the law?
Welcome to my take. Well, it's not my take, it's Miguel Crespo's take. Whatever. For inspiration to go.
Welcome to My Take, Pastor Crespo here. My Take is your oasis of inspiration and hope in the desert of negativity and despair. Thank you for joining this podcast. Thank you for being a part of the My Take family. I want to encourage you, if you are enjoying the podcast, like, share, subscribe, follow. All those different formats have different ways of attaching yourself to the podcast so that you know when new episodes come out. But let people know about it. The purpose of the podcast, and I'm just going to repeat this again, there's so much negativity out there. There's so many people out there who are struggling, and they watch the news to be informed on what's going on, but all it does is discourage and depress you, right? This podcast is dedicated to do the opposite. I try to use news articles and current happenings, and through that, steer into something inspirational, something positive. That is something that comes from the Word of God. Because the Bible is relevant to the things we deal with today, but the Bible is the source of inspiration and hope. Once you get to know the Bible, once you get to know the author of the Bible, your life will never be the same again. And by the way, we want to laugh along the way as well. I have an article here. This is an article. It talks about I have a large article. I'm not going to share the whole thing. The large article was basically 50 bizarre laws that have existed or still exist in America. I was very intrigued by reading some of the different things, different laws that they have in different states. I want to share some of them with you here, which will serve as a launching point into something else. Let me share this with you. And I said at the beginning of the podcast in the introduction, Wes, I don't know. Listen, I need to talk to somebody from West Virginia, but there is a ban. In West Virginia, it is illegal to use ferrets as hunting animals. I don't even know what I'm trying to picture what that would look like. Release the ferrets instead of release the hounds. And what do they do? I mean, how fast can those things run? What are they hunting? I don't get it. By the way, as I said, in New York had a ban on wearing masks in public. You weren't allowed to do that. But of course, when COVID hit, they did away with that, and now you can wear masks, which, criminals all over New York are very thankful for that change. But here we go. I have, what was it, three? I have three or four different laws that we have had in different places in our country, and maybe we can talk about them a little bit. And let me share this with you. I have. Let me go here. We're going to go to the first law here. The first one is, it comes from Alabama. It is illegal in Alabama. It is illegal in Alabama to dress as clergy. Did you know that? That's right. In Alabama, it's illegal for you to impersonate a member of the cloth. It is Alabama Code Title 13A. No person shall pretend to be a member of the clergy. So, we talk about the thing we think about the most when we're talking about impersonating someone. We usually think that it's illegal to impersonate an officer of the law. You can't dress up as a cop. You can't stop people. But in Alabama, it's illegal to dress up as a member of the clergy. And if you get caught impersonating a priest or a pastor, you will receive a fine not exceeding $500 or confinement in the county jail for not more than 1 year. Or if what you've done is especially egregious, they will give you both. That's right. So in Alabama, it's criminal code, no person. So, why you would want to pretend to be a member of the clergy, I don't know. But okay. Let's keep going. We're going to go to another one. Let's see. Oh, this one is gold. This one is precious. In California, In California Fish and Game Code, Article 2, they make an allowance for people to have what they call frog jumping competitions. So apparently they get together and, bring their frogs and who can jump the furthest. But now here's the thing. In their code, it says this, that you can have any number of live frogs. Any number of live frogs are allowed to be used in frog jumping contests. But should one of the poor creatures pass or be killed during the competition, it must be destroyed as soon as possible and may not be eaten or otherwise used for any purpose. Now, listen, I know California has some serious problems, issues. I understand people are moving out of the state, going to other parts of the country, but, you can't eat frogs after they've competed in a frog jumping competition, or at least the ones that die. So if you have a frog jumping competition and one of them dies, you cannot, under any circumstances, eat that frog. Okay. Where are we going with this? This is crazy. All right, let's look at something else here. Delaware. Oh, this one I thought was very interesting. Delaware has a rule, a law. This is Delaware Article 4 and under offenses against public peace and safety, 198-23. Listen to this. I kind of like this one. No person may disrupt religious worship by noise, talking, or whispering, or rude or indecent behavior, or by profane language within their place of worship. Now that makes sense, right? It is illegal to disrupt a church service, to be rude, to be nasty. It's illegal to use profanity in church, but it says this, or within 300 feet of the place of worship. That's right. It's illegal. It's illegal to swear within 300 feet of a church. That's in the state of Delaware. I kind of like that one, but how do you police that? If you are within 300 feet, listen, if you're in Delaware, watch out. If you're within 300 feet of a place of worship, you can't be indecent, you can't be rude, you can't be uttering profanities. That's kind of interesting, right? All right, I got one more. Let me go back. I got one more. Let's see here. Let me bring this up. This one takes the cake. Okay, this is in Tennessee, y'all. Okay, bless your heart. In Tennessee, Title 70, Code Wildlife Resources, Chapter 4, Part 2, skunk ownership and trading is illegal. That's right. In the state of Tennessee, it is against the law to import, to possess, to sell, to trade. You can't even barter a skunk, because if you do, you are guilty of a Class C misdemeanor. All right. I want you to think about Listen, guys, Tennessee, your legislators were paid taxpayer money to come together and pass a law, and this law says, let it be known from henceforth that the trafficking of skunks is illegal. Selling, possessing, even bartering skunks is illegal. Now, let me talk to you about this here, because I know a little bit about policy, rules, laws. Now, there are two reasons that laws get created, okay? Two reasons that lead to the creation of laws. One is you have a group of people that get together and they say, hey, let's create some laws that will help our society function better. We want to do this or that. We want to protect this. We want to help that. So let's create a law, okay? But then there's another reason. Sometimes somebody is doing something. They have done something. They've hurt someone. And in order to keep that from happening again, they come up with a law. You understand what I'm saying? So sometimes they create a law because someone got together and they had a bright idea. We want to be proactive, and we're trying to put this law in place. And then many laws, to be honest, many of the laws are because somebody did something dumb And then now we got to make a law so that people don't do that anymore. Well, where did these laws come from? Where did the law in Tennessee that says you can't own a skunk, it's illegal to own a skunk, come from? I mean, can you imagine? Can you imagine you're walking in downtown Chattanooga, and psst, hey, come here. Hey, listen, are you in the market for a skunk? Open the trench coat. I got big ones, little ones. I got the one with the black stripe in the white, or the white stripe surrounded by black. No, that's not a raccoon. That's a skunk. It's just a fat skunk. Yeah. What politician, what, I wish I could meet, I wish I could have been there in their halls when one politician got up and said, "Gentlemen and gentle ladies, I have proposition 1, 2, 3, 4, and this has to do with this pervasive problem that is plaguing the state of Tennessee, and that is the possession and the trafficking of our skunks." I'm sorry, I'm in a good mood today. I find everything funny, but who comes up with this stuff? Right? All right. I would like to know. And then, of course, there's actually a third reason why laws come up. These politicians sometimes are bored. They have nothing to do, but somebody gets their bright idea. Hey, why don't we outlaw skunk sales? I don't know. This world is crazy. It's just another sign that we need Jesus, I guess. All right, let me get serious here. Why am I sharing this with you? I'm sharing this with you, these bizarre laws that people make up. The reason I'm sharing this with you, because I thought it was funny, but I want you to stop for a second, and I want you to think about laws. And what laws really, what are they? You know that laws, the laws that we create are an extension of who we are. Laws that we create tell the community, tell people around us, tell those who are watching what we value. In other words, when we create a law, we're basically saying what's important to us. It's a way of, it gives you a window. A law gives you a window into the character of the organization or the people that make it. Does that make sense? Right? So apparently in the state of Tennessee, they love their skunks. I mean, they love their skunks. In the state of California, frogs' lives matter. Frog lives matter to them because you can use them in a competition, but no way, if they die in the service of the competition, you can't eat them. Of course, Delaware, that's a little bit more serious. They have a sense of respect for houses of worship, and they will not allow someone to come in and disrupt the service. So you get what I'm saying, is that some of this stuff is really important. Alabama, by saying that you can't dress up as clergy, is, again, they're showing their value, their respect for the clergy, for the position, and making pretend that you're someone who is looked up to provide spiritual counsel. It's to the state of Alabama. The state of Alabama takes it very seriously. But so when we're talking about laws, we're talking about what they say about the values of the people that make them. I want to draw your attention now, talking about laws, I want to draw your attention to the Bible. Now, I thought about, when I was going to do this episode, I was thinking about telling you about some of the strangest, most bizarre rules in the Bible, because there are some things in the Bible that, man, they're very, very strong. For example, in the Bible, if you had a slave for a certain amount of time and you gave that slave their freedom, and slaves in the Bible were treated differently than, say, slaves in the early history of the United States and what we see now. So it's a little bit of a different situation. But if in the Bible, if you wanted to release your slave, they can go free. But the slave wanted to stay. What they had to do was they had to allow their earlobe to be pierced through and have it nailed to the doorpost of the master's home. Yeah. That was a sign that you were going to stay and be a part of that family forever. So that's another. I didn't want to get too deep into that, but I want to let you know there's kind of some strange things. There's another strange, bizarre rule in the scriptures. The Bible says, and this is Deuteronomy chapter 25. It says, if two men are in a fight, and the wife of the one man goes up and grabs the other man in his private parts, like she grabs it to squeeze it to stop the fight, that woman's hand needs to be cut off as a penalty. Yeah. There's some weird ones there. Okay. Or at least on the face of it, it may seem weird. But I wanted to spend some time with that. But I said, you know what? No, I'm not going to do that. I will let you know that there can be some things that we can find rather interesting and have a good conversation sometime on that. I want to talk about this whole notion. Laws tell us what we value. Laws tell people what we believe is important. What is the character? What is the heart of the people or the person that's making those laws? And really, when we're talking about the Bible, when we're talking about law, our thoughts and minds should automatically go to the Ten Commandments. The Ten Commandments of God. That's right. Because, in the Bible, we have a lot of rules. We have a lot of, I'm going to call them laws we have a lot of laws that have been given to us in the Bible. When you read the books, the first 5 books of the Bible, read the writings of Moses, what we refer to as like the Mosaic Law. There are a lot of things that we read in there. And some of those things we still practice to this day. But when we're talking about the law, there is a difference. There is a distinction about the Ten Commandments from all the other laws and rules in the Bible. And probably the biggest one, if you're not aware, is that Moses received the information from God and he wrote these rules down. But the Ten Commandments were written by the hand of God himself, and it was written on stone. So it's not just that it was written by God, it was what it was written on. What do you think the significance is that those 10 commandments were written in stone as opposed to all the other rules and things that we might follow were written on whatever their form of paper or leather was back then, papyrus? There's a reason for that. But I want to do this because we don't have time in this podcast to do all of them. I want to look at 3 of the commandments of God. I want to look at 3 of the commandments, and let's just look and see. Let's just look and see what we see. The first commandment that I want to look at is Exodus chapter 20, verse 3, where the Bible says, God said to Moses, "You shall have no other gods before me." Now, I want to ask you a question. What does that law, what does that commandment tell you about what God values? What does that law tell you about God's character? Now, you might be cynical and say, oh, God doesn't want anybody before him because he's selfish. God, no, you can't have anybody but me. Okay, well, yeah, you can think that way. You'd be wrong, but you can think that way. Here's the thing. In the Bible, there were many gods that were mentioned. In the Bible, the people of Abraham, as they grew, they went into the territories of many different people and saw many different gods that the nations were worshiping. There's a place in the scriptures that says that when they were worship, some of these nations, when they're worshiping gods, they're actually worshiping demons. God was not telling them, you're going to worship me and me alone because I am narcissistic and selfish and I need you to love me. No. God says, don't have any other gods before me because none of those gods are real. None of those gods have the power to do what I can do. None of those gods have the power to protect you like I can protect you. So in other words, this law was to keep them solely to himself, but away from these evil gods, away from these made-up gods. Some of these gods were evil angels being worshipped. Some of them were just figments of people's imagination, wood and stone. They can't hear prayer. They can't answer prayer. They can't be there for you. So that's the law. Remember I said the law tells you what the values are of the person that created it. The law tells you what the character is of the person that created it. Let's look at another one. Here's one. This is the 4th commandment, and this is a long one. Exodus 20, verse 8 through 11. This is the Sabbath commandment. I'm going to read it. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. In it thou shalt not do any work, thou, nor thy son, thy daughter, thy manservant, thy maidservant, nor thy cattle, nor thy stranger that is within thy gates. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that is in them, and rested the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. You see, this Sabbath commandment, and this alone can merit many episodes on the podcast, but why did God give us the Sabbath commandment? What does it tell us about what God values? What does the Sabbath commandment tell us about the character of God? Because remember, he wrote it, he put it in stone. It tells you something about who he is, just like all these other laws tell us about the people that made it, what they value. Well, do you know that this commandment is about rest? It's about physical rest. It's not about God getting physical rest. It's about man getting physical rest. He says, remember the Sabbath day. You keep it holy by doing nothing, by resting. You see, there's a physical aspect. Am I saying, does God value you? Does God value you taking rest? Is it possible that you can work so hard that you can wear yourself out prematurely? God cares. God values. It's in the character of God to care about you and making sure that you're getting rest. But also we see here, what does God value? He values that we remember that we are creations of his hand. That's what it says. God made the world in 6 days, and on the seventh day he rested, and that's why he calls us to rest, because we remember what he did. So what does God value? What's at the character of God? God values relationship with human beings. God created us. And the Sabbath commandment was given to remind us that we were created, that God created us, and you're not an accident. You didn't evolve from a very smart monkey. Although I have to tell you on a side note, I know some pretty smart monkeys that are smarter than some people, but that's a whole nother subject. What does the Sabbath commandment tell you about the character of God and what God values? Well, God values you. The Sabbath commandment, when you dig into it, the Sabbath commandment has a physical rest component, but the Sabbath commandment also has a spiritual rest component. And I can share that with you some other time. Let's look at another one. We're going through this. I know we're going through this quickly, but it's to keep you informed during your drive to work. Here is Exodus chapter 20, verse 13. This is one of the commandments of God. It says very simply, thou shalt not commit adultery. You know what adultery is, right? I don't need to explain that. But if the law gives you a picture as to what the lawgiver values, if the law gives you a picture into the character of the person, why should God care? Why should God care if you're committing adultery? Who cares? Why does it matter? Well, what we know is this, right? Is that when people are engaged in relationships outside of marriage, when they're engaged in sleeping and doing things with other people that they should only be doing with their spouse, don't you know that it causes a great deal of heartache and pain and brings a great deal of instability to the home? Don't you know that when people commit adultery, they hurt the children in the relationship? There's this notion, there's this idea, there's this thing that we call love. There's this thing that we call loyalty. When people get married, they promise to love and care for one another. And they're going to forsake all others and put the other one first. But when you commit adultery, you break your word. So the values here tell me that God values keeping your word. God values a happy home. God values peace. God values purity and order. You see, why is it wrong to commit adultery? Who cares who you're sleeping with? Listen, who cares? It doesn't matter. Well, God cares. God cares because he knows the impact that it can have in your life. Yeah, you know what? There are some things that, forbidden fruit may seem like it will taste sweet, but that will only last for a little while, and then there's the bitter aftertaste of shame and regret. So these things give you a picture. They give you a window into the character of God and what he values. Now, as I was thinking about this podcast, I want to end it here. But as I was thinking about this podcast, I was thinking about some of my own rules, some of the own laws that I have in my own life and in my own home. Now, if you were to talk to some of my children and you were to ask them, what are the 2 rules that you grew up with in the Crespo home? Now, of course, I'm a Christian, so we lived as Christians. That's just, that wasn't part of it. We're just living as Christians. They didn't know any different. But there were 2 rules that I have in my house, and if you were to ask them, and they may even, some of them may even be listening now, they should remember this. If not, shame on you. But I would tell them this: there's 2 rules in my home. 2. 1, no lying. I don't like lying. I hate it. I do not like lying. And 2, do not disrespect mom. Those are the 2 rules. You want to live? You want to live a long life? You want to live in my house? Don't lie, and you better not be disrespecting your mother. Now, okay, let's psychoanalyze that. What does Pastor Crespo value? What does that tell you about the character of Pastor Crespo? Well, I value honesty. I value truth. If you're a liar, nobody wants to be your friend. If you're a liar, nobody's going to want to employ you for very long. If you're a liar, no one's going to want to work with you. They're not going to want to have their things around you. A person who's a liar has very little value to their fellow man. I don't want my children to grow up to become like that. Number 1. Number 2, I also value my wife. I value my wife, my children's mother. And I want my children to value their mother. So those are the things. You just got a window. By the rules that I have in my house, you have just seen a window into the character of Pastor Crespo. Now, listen, I hope my wife isn't listening to this podcast, because I'm a little concerned if I say, I value my wife, I lift her up, I'm afraid it might go to her head. No, I don't think so. Maybe. I don't know. We'll see. Told you I'm feeling good today. That's my take. And that's inspiration to go.